Welcome to HBOT Journal, a channel dedicated to understanding hyperbaric oxygen therapy through evidence, science, and experience.
Claustrophobia is probably one of the biggest and, frankly, most valid concerns people have when they think about hyperbaric oxygen therapy. The whole idea of being inside an enclosed, unfamiliar space, yeah, that can be a huge hurdle. But today, we're going to look at that feeling and we're going to completely reframe the conversation around it.
So let's really dig into this question, because it challenges the way we usually think about this. For a lot of people, the anxiety that pops up in a controlled medical setting, well, it isn't actually about how big or small the chamber is. It's about something way more fundamental.
And this really gets to the heart of it. We often misunderstand claustrophobia, especially in a situation like this. It's not so much a fear of small spaces as it is a fear of losing control. You know, that feeling that you can't just leave when you want to, or that you don't know what's coming next, or, and this is a big one, that you can't stop the whole thing if you need to. So the real issue here, it's control, not space. All right, so to really unpack all this, we've got a clear roadmap. First, we'll tackle what the real fear is and why control is so important. Then, we're going to look at something interesting, why anxiety often spikes before you even get in the chamber. After that, we'll talk about how predictability is your best friend, what you can do to prepare, and finally, and this is probably the most important part, we'll cover the safety net that's in place to make sure you always have control. Okay, let's get into the core idea here. Your brain is wired to react when it gets unfamiliar information. New sounds, weird sensations like pressure changes. Anxiety really kicks in when you mix those new things with the feeling that you can't just change your situation on a dime. So your mind isn't reacting to how big the space is. It's reacting to the feeling that you can't control your environment or just get up and leave.
So this reframed definition is absolutely crucial. When we're talking about a medical procedure like this one, what we're really dealing with is a fear response that's triggered by a loss of predictability and personal control. And once you get that, the whole approach changes. It's no longer about just toughing it out. It becomes about structure, clear information, and solid communication.
All right, now let's talk about when this anxiety actually shows up, because it's probably not when you'd expect. Those moments right before a session, they are often way more stressful than the session itself. That's the power of anticipation at work. And this chart shows a really common pattern. See that? Anxiety is often at its highest in the waiting room, right before the door even closes. And you might ask, why is that? Well, it's because what our brain imagines, that anticipation of the unknown, is often way scarier than the actual reality of the procedure. Once things get started and the process becomes predictable, you can see those anxiety levels usually come right down and level off. See, your brain is basically a gap-filling machine. It hates uncertainty. So when it doesn't have enough information, its default setting is to fill in those blanks with the worst-case scenarios. It's a survival instinct, right? But in a controlled medical setting, all that does is create stress you don't need. So, what's the antidote? It's clear, structured information. Predictability doesn't just lower fear, it actually replaces it with knowledge. And that leads us right to the core solution for handling that pre-session anxiety, a process that is super structured, totally predictable, and has zero surprises. We're basically replacing the unknown with a clear, step-by-step roadmap. The whole session can be broken down into these 4 simple, manageable phases. First, there's the entry and the door sealing. Next comes a slow pressurization. After that, you've got a stable period where you're just at pressure. And finally, a slow depressurization to finish. Just knowing this sequence turns what might seem like a big, intimidating event into just a few predictable steps.
And the one word that describes every single one of those phases is this: gradual. Nothing happens quickly, nothing is sudden. The pressure changes are slow, they're deliberate, and that's on purpose. This careful pacing is a fundamental safety feature. It's designed to give your body time to adjust, and more importantly, to keep you feeling comfortable and in control. Speed is risky, gradual change is safe.
Okay, so now let's shift gears and talk about your active role in all of this, because this isn't just something that happens to you. There are real, practical things you can do that empower you before and during the session, tangible tools that help you stay in the driver's seat. So preparation can start with something as simple as a pre-session walkthrough, just to take the mystery out of the equipment. It also means fully understanding that the communication system is an open line, always on, between you and the operator. You are never isolated. And then there's practicing some slow, steady breathing techniques. And maybe the most reassuring part, knowing you are being monitored continuously, every single second.
These aren't just nice ideas. They are built-in parts of the process designed to give you control.
And let's be clear about the breathing part. This is way more than someone just telling you to relax. This is what we call physiologic management. Using slow, controlled breathing is a scientific tool. It actively works against your body's physical stress response, that fight or flight instinct. It's a concrete way for you to manage how your body is reacting to a new environment. All right, we've arrived at what is probably the most critical piece of this entire puzzle, the safety net. This is where we tackle that ultimate fear head-on. What happens if it all just becomes too much? The answer lies in very clear, well-defined safety protocols.
This is the question on so many people's minds, isn't it? What if I just can't handle it and I need to stop? And that is a perfectly valid concern. The entire system is actually designed with that exact possibility in mind. Real trust comes from knowing that you have the final say, the power to pause or stop the session. And this is a really powerful way to think about it. Stopping is information, not failure. If you need to stop a session, it's never seen as a failure. Not at all. It's just information. It gives the clinical team really important feedback. It tells them where your comfort boundary is on that specific day, and that lets them adjust the plan. Honestly, it's a successful use of a safety feature.
So, where exactly is that line? Well, this really clears it up. Feeling anxious but still being in control. You can still communicate, you can still follow directions, that's manageable. The safety line is only crossed when that anxiety gets to a point where it starts to interfere with communication or monitoring. That's the objective trigger to pause or end the session. And this really hammers home the guiding principle of any responsible medical treatment. Your safety and your well-being always come before the goal of finishing a session. There is absolutely no pressure to push through it if you're uncomfortable. The entire protocol prioritizes you, not the clock.
And really, that sums up the entire philosophy. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy isn't some test of your endurance or your willpower. It's a controlled medical procedure. The whole setup, the gradual pace, the constant monitoring, the open communication, the ability to stop, it's all designed to make sure the session operates safely well within your personal limits, not to test them. So, I'll leave you with this final question to think about. How does knowing that this whole process is built around control, not just tolerance, change how you see this therapy? It really shifts the whole focus from enduring something to being empowered through it.
Okay, so to wrap this all up, claustrophobia in HBOT is about control, predictability, and safety. It's not a matter of toughness or tolerance. Preparation can help a lot of people, but we also have to acknowledge that sometimes avoiding HBOT is the safest choice. Different chamber designs exist for different situations, and it's all about finding what works for you, always under appropriate medical supervision.
To continue learning, explore the HBOT Journal channel.